Welcome to the Victoria Rumble Room. And this is a show that is going to be honoring Canada. This is Canada Day week. And we have a real action-packed show for you. I'm Robin Adair, and joining across town in his Canadian capsule is John Juricic, the Croatian/Canadian sensation.
Hey, Robin, that's a great. Hey, love your flag, man. Right on.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Beautiful.
It's Canada Day week.
Yeah, exactly. Canada Day, Canada. Man, that our nation's soul, has been rumbled. It's been challenged. And excited to do the show and excited to have an emphasis on Canada Day. Many of these celebrations have been canceled across Canada. Municipalities have canceled them. Why? Because of COVID, but also because of these just horrific announcements and findings of Indigenous graves across Canada. It's troubling. Our soul is being challenged, and I am about to talk to Lisa Helps and ask her about council. Did they cancel Canada Day? Come on, you can't do that. Well, I'll ask her about that. What's really going on? And we got to find a way to come out of all of this turmoil, health crisis, Indigenous nations crisis. We're all puzzled. What is Canada Day? What does that mean? I don't know where this is going to go, Robin. I don't know.
Well, I think what it means is we're all determined as Canadians to find a way out together. And that's what Canadians are. And that's what we should be celebrating. John, I couldn't agree more. I do have some thoughts on Canada Day I'd like to share. It's very important at this time that we honor our First Nations. We must remember the suffering that they've endured. We must remember that the residential school situation was a wrong-headed one. And it's important that we gather as a country in solidarity with our Indigenous people. It was tragic to hear about those 215 unmarked graves in Kamloops. It's even worse to hear about over 700 unmarked graves in Saskatchewan, also on the site of a former residential school. This is a black eye for our whole country, and Canadians want to do better. We must do better, and I believe we will. And that is worth celebrating. That is why Canada Day is important, because we as a people can do better. We know it, and we're determined to celebrate that fact. How many countries would share that determination? I think that speaks well of our country, and this is an opportunity to wave our flag with a purpose. And speaking of waving our flag in a totally different arena, the hockey arena, hey, the Montreal Canadiens have made the Stanley Cup final for the first time since 1993. And a lot of people across the country are excited about that. I'm happy about it. But in Quebec, they march to a different drummer. I've never really understood Quebec politics. I've never been a fan of Quebec politics. I mean, here in Western Canada, in BC in particular, we have cadre schools. We have a massive French immersion program. We have services in French on television and on radio. We make a huge effort for a relatively small population in BC. And do you think people in Quebec appreciate that very much? No, they're always demanding more. They always say they are hard done by after 250 years of the English presence in Quebec. They treat their English population like second-class citizens. They're not much better with their allophone population. And so it's a little hard sometimes to appreciate that Quebec is really happy about the Montreal Canadiens. But French Canada is part of our fabric. We must honor French Canada. We must get behind it. That's part of being Canadian too. And so for that reason, I say, go Quebec, go Habs, go Canada, go.
Robin, thanks for saying those things. The country is struggling. The country's struggling, and this might not end for many years. We always thought of ourselves as somewhat fault-free, not really having some of those schism moments that other countries in Europe and especially in the US have. Here we have ours. How are we going to handle it? I really appreciate your words as we enter Canada Day and get a sense of who we are as a people and reflecting backwards on the habitant. You know, so many of us are hidden Montreal hockey fans. You know, of course, we're on the West Coast, no doubt about that. And you default to the Canucks. Oh my God, we had a couple of good years there. But many hidden fans, as I was. Man, I remember those early 70s, the Dryden days, the Yvon Convoyer, André Achard. Oh my gosh. What a great thing to have these Montreal Canadian team, this young team, hit the Stanley Cup playoffs right around Canada Day.
I always played with the red team on my hockey set.
That's right. That's right. You know, before technology, right before we could play these games, we'd have little marbles and everything.
Yeah.
I'll tell you something, though. Something that truly does represent Canada, represents who we are, is our arts and culture community. And man, have they taken a hit over this past year and a half. These are folks that barely survive anyway, financially, economically, these organizations. And so we're I think both of us, we're going to find a way to highlight the arts and culture sector. And for example, in Victoria, we're lucky, a city of our size. We have the Victoria Symphony. We have an opera. We have phenomenal cultural centers like the Craigdarroch Castle, Butchart Gardens. How have they been surviving this past year and a half? Let's chat about that. And hopefully they'll turn a corner and survive this summer. So we understand.
Speaking of the Victoria Symphony, John, I think we had a clip of them before we get into this interview, don't we?
We certainly do. Oh, just it's heartwarming to hear that music within the context of these difficult times. Oh, what a wonderful clip, the Victoria Symphony. Let's chat with Matthew White, CEO of the Victoria Symphony. Let's zoom in and hear about how they've been doing over the past year and a half.
And now joining us in the Rumble Room is Matthew White, the CEO of the Victoria Symphony Orchestra. And Matthew, welcome to the Rumble Room. Great to have you here.
Thank you for having me. Nice to see you both.
Now, Matthew, the Symphony is relaunching, but it's going to be smaller venues this summer. Maybe you could comment on that to start.
Yeah, well, I mean, normally people in Victoria associate the symphony with Symphony Splash, which sadly did not occur last year because of the pandemic. And sadly, again, because we're still, at the tail end of the pandemic, we can't do it again this year. That's 40,000 people normally sort of gathering cheek to jowl in the Inner Harbor there. And so that's not on the cards for the summer. So we just thought to ourselves, what would be a great way of getting our symphony musicians back out into the public's awareness? And so we put together a festival that we're calling Open Air, a summer festival of music that's going to be down on the grounds of St. Anne's Academy downtown. And we're going to do 60 plus concerts, each of which will be about 45 minutes in length, featuring musicians from the symphony, as well as a bunch of opera singers that work regularly with the Pacific Opera Victoria. So it's a collaboration with Pacific Opera Victoria. And over 2 weeks, between roughly July 22nd and August 2nd, I believe it is, we're going to be doing 60 outdoor concerts on 2 stages, along with a bunch of sort of short, fun pop-up concerts in the meadows in the front of the property there that'll be free to anybody who's interested. So yeah, it's our limited way of getting back into people's awareness, reminding people that the arts are alive and well.
That's fantastic to hear. It absolutely, the fact that arts and culture and music are such a vibrant piece of the Victoria scene, the Lower Vancouver Island scene. You folks are such a critical element to that. Let's backtrack a little bit to the Symphony Splash. It's very unfortunate it hasn't been on. That was sort of almost the central event in Victoria every year. At 40,000 people. You're now recently joined the Symphony, and tell us do you have any stories about Symphony Splash to relate to us so that those of us that are, regretting the fact that it's not on get to live that through you right now?
Well, I guess the funniest story is that we were facing a bit of a challenge before the pandemic came, and that was that our barge sank. So that's kind of a good story, and we've got to figure out a solution to a sunken barge. So we're right now we're talking to the Navy. We're talking to a bunch of other folks about trying to get us a new barge so that we can get back out on the water next summer.
Well, do let us know about the progress of that. I mean, Robin and I, through upcoming Rumble Room shows, if there's a fundraising campaign required, let us know. I hope there weren't any musicians on the barge as it.
There were no musicians on the barge at the time, and I'm pretty sure that no musicians had anything to do with the sinking of the barge. Everybody loves Splash, and we're just looking forward to getting it back on the schedule again. And the idea is that we want to get it back for that sort of last weekend in July, beginning of August next summer.
I'm really excited about how the orchestra has managed to be innovative during a terrible time. I mean, you arrived in 2020 and you barely got your feet wet, and suddenly we're in the middle of a pandemic. And some of the concerts that have successfully gone underway over this period of time, you actually have the musicians socially distanced.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, one thing that was really clear to us that just turning off the lights for a year was not going to be an option. That we had all these musicians who were important parts of our community. We needed to find a way to continue to keep them working. And luckily the government worked with us, and we were able to, much more so than many of our colleagues out east, actually, we were able to work all year long. So we did a very ambitious virtual concert season, where we rented halls like the Royal Theatre and Christchurch Cathedral in downtown Victoria and the UVic Farquhar Auditorium, and we filmed full-length concerts, all physically distanced, wearing the masks, and it actually went really surprisingly well. And the amount of pickup and audience feedback that we got from people was just astonishing.
You mentioned how you're going to and where you're going to be performing over the next several months over the summer. Let's just assume that the tremendous progress we have dealing with this health crisis continues, and that by September, October, we're maybe hopefully going to be able to start to gather again, right? Are there any plans at this stage for playing at UVic or the Royal Theatre in the fall that we should let our listeners know about?
Well, absolutely. And I would say that the first thing to sort of remind people of is just to stay tuned. They can go to our website, victoriasymphony.ca, whenever they want to for the most up-to-date information. But basically the plan at the moment is to stay flexible and nimble, which is sort of been the name of the game all year. But we've organized the fall schedule in such a way that we can actually pivot really quickly with only about 2 weeks notice from a video presentation, sort of like the ones we've been doing this year, to a in-person concert very, very quickly that we would sell tickets for. And the assumption is that, potentially we'll be allowed to open up to reduced capacity. So for instance, if we're in the UVic auditorium and normally it holds, let's say, roughly 1,000 people, that by the end of September or October, they may be saying, well, actually, you can open up to 30% capacity. That what we would do is we would probably do 3 performances of whatever the program was to reduce capacity. So, it'll be an interesting restart, not quite the kind of ode to joy explosion that we, might like. And it's going to be sort of more of a gradual re-entry, but that's a very Canadian way of approaching things, I would say.
Matthew, I have a first cousin, my cousin Anne, who was extremely bright in school, straight A student, awesome in math and physics and science. And she was also an oboe player. And she ended up playing for the Victoria Symphony for a number of years. She doesn't play with them anymore. She's moved on to other things. But what I remember about that was there's a young woman at the time who could have done anything. And she chose a life in music, which was wonderful. It was creative. But she was just barely getting by. And I don't think people really think about that so much. They think about, oh, it must be wonderful being in an orchestra and playing and wearing that beautiful suit or the beautiful dress on stage. And isn't it fantastic to see the world? But the musicians who play classical music around the world, it must be a very steep pyramid to the top of a tiny group that actually make good money, and a lot of other people who are doing it for the love of it. How have they got by during this pandemic?
Well, first of all, I'd like to acknowledge that what you've just said, I think, is a really, really important thing for people to remember, is that most of the people who play in a symphony orchestra devote their lives to the creation of beauty. And I know that sounds super poetic or something, but the truth is most of those people are so smart. They could be getting to a position of prominence in an orchestra requires the type of brains that you need to become a doctor or to become, another serious professional. It's highly, highly competitive. So I've always thought of musicians myself as kind of donors in a way to the cultural scene. They have foregone a life of money and comfort for a love surrounded by beautiful sounds, and that's in a way it's a compromise they've made in order to devote their lives to music. So I just want to say thank you for noting that, because I totally agree. And every single day I feel appreciative of what the musicians have decided to do with their lives, because it's a gift to the rest of us in a way. But this year, I mean, to answer the question more practically, this year, the musicians actually had to deal with a 75% compensation package. So they actually did not get paid their entire salaries this year because we had no direct income. I will say that I was just really amazingly encouraged, however, that our community of donors and the government really stepped in to support us. So for instance, the wage subsidy program made a huge difference to our ability to continue to function. The rent subsidy also made a big difference. But also the BC Arts Council and the Canada Council both provided resiliency funding, which meant that basically we were able to keep the lights on and the musicians paid at least enough to keep them going. But yeah, they took a hit this year, and that's something that looks like for next year. The society has agreed to commit to full compensation, despite the fact that we're not necessarily 100% sure what's going to happen on the income side. But we're feeling that the idea of 2 years of reduced compensation for musicians who are already, not the most highly paid people in the community is really important. So I guess that was the long-winded answer.
No, it's not an easy thing to answer, and it's something that I think was another reason I think John and I so much wanted to highlight the fact that the symphony was back, because we're aware of the fact that people in the arts are not the highest paid people, and people who are really good at it are incredible people who are all-rounders. John and I were both big on recorder in school. We weren't really big on playing in symphony orchestras. And I think that would go for most people in the community. It's only a very small, gifted group of people who could play in a symphony orchestra. And it's a shame they don't make more money. And it's really great to hear that at least they are able to get by. So we still have a symphony orchestra.
Well, that's it. And I just hope that people remember just how much value the symphony and the opera and all these artistic groups bring to the community. Because it's sort of hard to, when the pandemic hit, actually, ironically, everybody desperately needed the arts because everybody was having such a hard time feeling distant and isolated. And where do you turn when you're feeling like that? Often you turn straight to the arts. which ironically were shut down too. A lot of it was shut down. So I thought that was kind of an ironic moment in people's awareness when everybody realized, oh, wait a minute, actually, the arts really are important. They're vital to our basic sense of well-being.
What a breath of fresh air hearing beautiful classical music on the Rumble Room, Johnny. Boy, we're upping our game here. It really makes the show swing along having such beautiful music. And it's important to highlight the arts. It's part of Victoria's fabric. It's part of our Canadian fabric. Hey, it's Canada Week.
Right.
Don't want to forget Canada Week. So it's important that we all rally around these things. Our cultural mosaic needs to be looked after. And John, I think we are now moving to something that's a little bit different than we expected. I recall we were going to be interviewing Lisa Helps, and we had it scheduled on a pre-tape, and we both thought it was going to be at a certain time of the day. And so we even talked about it the day before, and we said, okay, let's get lined up for that interview. And I'm driving down the Pat Bay Highway, happily thinking, well, I've got another hour and I'll be on with Lisa Helps. And I get a phone call in my car from you saying,
I'm
where
on
are
the
you?
I'm on the line with Lisa Helps.
I go, what? You're on with Lisa Helps? Why? She's not on for another hour. Oh, well, the schedule got changed. And I'm going, what? Well, can she change her schedule? No, she has to come on now. And I say, Johnny, you do it. You talk to Lisa Helps.
I ran with it. Yeah, we're going to have to see what that turns out. Is it the Victoria Rumble Room or the Victoria Ruffle Room? Well, we'll leave it up to everyone to see and judge for yourselves. Yeah, thanks, Robin, for being a judge. Even I had the time wrong. I was napping up to 20 minutes before the interview, but I quickly threw cold water on my face and got going. I've known Lisa for a long time. I'm a supporter of Lisa Helps, and so interviewed her with fabulous questions that we both agreed that we would chat about. But one thing I did not talk about enough, which is of great concern to me, is the rising levels of crime, danger, and lack of safety in downtown Victoria. I wish I had asked her that, because I think that's becoming a big problem. Like, not just one side thinks that way. I think folks are scared to go downtown. And so, needless to say, maybe down the road, we'll have another chance to chat with her after the summer. Maybe when there's more people downtown, this thing might balance out a little bit. Anyway, judge for yourselves. Let's zoom in and let's have a chat. Let me have a chat with Lisa Helps. Welcome, Mayor Lisa Helps. Welcome to the Victoria Rumble Room. And we appreciate you joining us. There's been clearly a miscommunication, misunderstanding, and my fellow Rumbler, Robin Adair, is not here. So I'm going to carry the weight of the interview today, which is just fine. I mean, you and I go actually quite a ways back.
I just remembered we used to have a CFAC show on Sunday mornings, didn't we?
Right.
Wow.
I mean, I knew you when you were CEO of the Victoria Community Micro Lending. And then we did the CFAC show, of which I think you're on at least half a dozen times. And Wide Awake, it was started at 8 o'clock in the morning. And then we've done numerous podcasts. I actually feel like I know you. I don't know if you feel the same way about me.
I totally do. Yeah, I remember in the John, Paul, and Mike show, you guys came and sat in my kitchen and we did an interview at my kitchen table.
Exactly. And I have pictures of that and everything. So we do go back. And I supported you in your election as mayor the first time. I worked with a team to help raise funds for you. So everybody knows we actually know each other. I would do it all over again. I think you're a fantastic person, and I think you've done great things for the city. But there are questions I'd like to ask you about.
Of course.
And so, recently, I'd say the last 4 or 5 years, I've done a lot of work with our regional First Nations, and especially around workforce diversity, around how can we increase participation of First Nations in the business community networks that I have established and I'm very familiar with. Obviously, that our regional First Nations community were front and center with regard to this Canada Day events coming up, and I know have been front and center with a lot of the policies that you've initiated and described over the years. There is a little bit of a misunderstanding with regard to what you said about this upcoming Canada Day. Some people think you want to cancel it. I've said no, we're not canceling Canada Day. It's the way that the city is reacting and their contribution to Canada Day that's changed. How would you elaborate? Just tell us exactly what's going on with what you are wanting to have the city do on Canada Day.
John, thank you. That's a great question. We expect, I was in a police board meeting yesterday. I'm the chair of the police board, and the police are gearing up for festivities. There will be, not big 10,000 people coming downtown for fireworks. We weren't doing that anyways, but people in Victoria will celebrate Canada Day. Some will come downtown and go to a bar. Some will gather with their neighbors, and that's wonderful. No canceling getting people together. That's not. Don't have the power to do that, and wouldn't want that power, because we live in a free and democratic society where people have the ability and the right to gather. And that's one of the things that makes this country great. What we had been planning, though, just like we did last year, was a 1-hour TV broadcast with Czech TV on Canada Day that featured local artists, local nations. Last year we were so lucky to have Bonnie Henry be part of it, and local celebrities like that, kind of to celebrate Canada. And so as we were planning this year's video broadcast, and of course this was in the shadow of the 215 children's bodies being discovered at the Kamloops Indian Residential School. Our staff and the producing team went to the Lekwungen dancers who've participated for the last decade in Canada Day and said, we're checking in about Canada Day, and they said we're not going to participate this year because our elders are grieving that this is too close to the trauma. And so at first, I didn't even think, I thought something of it, but that happened on a Friday. And then over the weekend, I thought, well, how can we, for the last decade, we've had Indigenous participation. How can we have a Canada Day celebration, essentially when our neighbors are grieving? And so what we decided to do, and I actually just finished crafting the run of show this morning, is we're going to have a 1-hour TV broadcast later in the summer that looks at what does it mean to be Canadian in light of all these things that we're learning about our history. And we're going to have local Indigenous people, and we're going to have local artists and musicians. We'll have some storytelling. And so we will do something. It just won't be on July the 1st.
Well, it's been so interconnected, that Lisa helps and councillor want to cancel Canada Day. That has been misunderstood, in my opinion. And I think things are getting better with COVID, but they're not back to pre-COVID ways. A lot of folks would have been concerned and possibly worried about going downtown on Canada Day. In terms of within a health framework, I can see that we would not, postpone it this year and wait till next year. Yeah. But there was this connection to how we were going to celebrate, and we're going to cancel. That's not the case.
Well, yeah, it's a really bad broken game of telephone. First of all, there were no festivities this year because of COVID, period. Right. We did a video last year. We were going to do a video again this year, period. That's it. And then, thankfully, we're coming out the other side of this pandemic, and we are allowed to gather with our neighbors now. And I think that's really good. People will do that. People will, across this country, in many different ways, mark that day. Some will mourn, some will celebrate, some will just be happy that they can go down the street and have a barbecue in their neighbor's backyard again with these restrictions lifting. So again, that's what makes this country a good place to live, is that we have the freedom to associate and to gather as we will.
Well, I look forward to did you say 1 hour sort
Yeah,
of
it'll be a check TV
documentary type.
special.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing that. Without a doubt. I am somebody who believes in communication. I believe in lots of communication. In fact, you and I have done, I bet you, a dozen podcasts over the year, including the CFAC stuff. And you know that I love to do this. I'm now doing the show, and I feel that it's really important in terms of letting folks know how you feel, especially politicians. And I think that every council can do a better job. And I think that quite possibly you or your council could have done a better job in this particular issue, which I happen to really love, which is the bike lanes. You know, I'm a heavy guy. I would have been a lot heavier had I not been cycling. But I really think that these bike lanes and the bike lane infrastructure are extraordinary. And I think that story can be better told. I think that story and the consequences of what you've done, it's a legacy of yours, is really amazing, and the whole world needs to hear about it. In retrospect, is there something that you might have done differently in implementing the bike lanes and the bike lanes policies and vision years ago?
Yeah, it's a great question. I feel like sometimes it just takes the actual infrastructure to be built and used before there's an actual story to tell. And I think there was a turning point in the Times Colonist on the weekend, a really great story, unsolicited by the city, obviously, about how bike lanes are transforming people's lives. Young families being able to get out there, bring their kids downtown. A guy saves $300 a month because he sold his car and doesn't have to buy car insurance anymore or pay for gas, and he's happier and healthier and has more money in his pocket, right? And so those are the stories that we've been trying to tell, but no one believes them until they're told by actual people who use the actual infrastructure. And until recently, you know, the network hasn't been built out enough to have that use case actually develop.
Oh, let me tell you right now that I'd do stories. I got a little camera on the top of my helmet. It's amazing, and these lanes are exactly where they need to be. Anyway, sorry to interrupt. Keep going.
Yeah, no, that's okay. But I think we did course correct. And I think the mistake we made in 2016 was branding the whole thing as Biketoria. You know, kind of catchy, right? Biketoria. But I remember I can't remember if it was New Year's of 2017 or New Year's of 2018. Probably a year in, maybe. Anyways, I wrote an article in the Times Colonist saying Biketoria is dead. We shall never talk of Biketoria again, because this isn't about bikes. It's about people. It's about new street trees. It's about new pedestrian infrastructure and, you know, benches and plazas. And so I think that you know, had we not trying to be so cutesy, Biketoria, we probably would have.
Well, you know, Lisa, you know, thinking about that and the communications and how messages are branded, it sort of aligned with an emergent Techtoria and that emergent brand, and it was sort of consistent. But in retrospect, that might have been done differently. Well, glad to hear that. I'm telling you right now, they're amazing. They're amazing. This infrastructure is extraordinary. They create extraordinary experiences. And anytime you want an old, overweight, balding man to give you a story on biking around Victoria, you let me know. Okay, let's shift. We don't have a lot of time, but I'd like to ask a couple questions. One about economic development. One, obviously, about the the camp in Beacon Hill Park. A million things have been said about the camping and the way that the councils manage the homelessness, etc. A million things. Let's just focus in on the permanency or lack of permanency on the decision around Beacon Hill to only have a 2-year moratorium, whereas a lot of folks want that to be permanent. Explain to us, please, if that's going to change. Why is it only 2 years, etc.?
It's a great question. So I am a big believer in practicality and reality. And the reality is that it's going to take about 2 years for restoration to happen in the park, both natural and park staff to do that work. In that 2-year period, while our staff are out there doing the restoration and while Mother Nature is growing things back, we're going to work really hard to have what's called functional zero homelessness. So that if somebody becomes homeless in the city or the region, they don't have to go sleep in a park. there's a temporary place for them to go. And I think 2 years is a reasonable amount of time. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of housing units under development right now. We have a provincial government that is more committed than ever to providing housing and ending homelessness. And so those two things combined, 2 years gives us a goal to make sure that if somebody loses their home, they don't have to go pitch a tent. There's a transitional housing or, whatever it is they need. And it also gives the park time for restoration and rehabilitation. And I mean, it will be up to the next council to say, they'll have to say, do we allow camping again in Beacon Hill Park? And I can't see anyone voting in favor of that when that time comes. Mm-hmm. Why would they if there aren't people sleeping outside? So it really, the 2 year was to put a stake in the ground and say, if we keep focused on, over the pandemic, 600 people moved inside, 600. And there are still people outside, and 2 years is a reasonable amount of time. So that was my thinking with the 2 years.
Okay, thank you.
And also, you need 5 votes to get anything done. And I knew that there were 5 votes for 2 years.
Okay, well, that's fascinating. You alluded to the fact that there'll be a new council. We'll ask you that question at the end of the half an hour. But anyway, one of the key reasons, after obviously getting to know you and liking you, etc., for supporting you was your position on economic development. If you recall, or people recall, you certainly do recall, you had a very progressive view on economic development for the city as you were putting your name forward against the incumbent mayor, then Dean Fortin, who I felt did not have such a viewpoint. You had a very progressive view that ECDEV is positive for the city, that it needs to happen, that municipal council should be supporting such initiatives. So consequences of those decisions are a couple things. And I'd like to talk about this for a few minutes and then ask about what other things you might be doing for key economic sectors in tourism and technology and perhaps marine. But now, eventually, as we come out of COVID, people are going to want to live downtown. More and more people want to live downtown. And some folks are starting to talk. There's always some folks, hey, Lisa? Somewhere there's somebody talking opposite to what you're thinking, that their densification downtown is getting too much. It's too many people live. I disagree with that notion, but can you talk about that sort of generally speaking, please?
Yeah, I absolutely can. This is one of the things that I've become really passionate about over the last 2 years, I would say. I mean, economic development, I've always been interested in and supporting. I think that prosperity is really important. It's important for obviously our economic well-being. It's important for our sense of self, our sense of dignity. But over the last couple of years, I've seen an increasing battle between exactly that, too much density. We want Victoria to stay how it's always been, versus the need. And the need is, I think the estimate is just in the city alone, we're going to have 11,000 new households move into the city by 2041. And that is just around the corner. And I went up to Tofino this past weekend to go surfing, and I haven't been out of town because we're not allowed to go anywhere. And I was shocked to see at the top of Bear Mountain, new single family homes being constructed. And we are tearing down wilderness. And so do you want to continue to tear down wilderness, or do you want to have a density in the urban core? And it's a struggle that cities around the world are facing. Victoria is not alone. But I am, if we really care, and it's interesting because some of the same people who say I don't want density are the ones who say I'm passionate about climate change. Well, if you're passionate about climate change, then you have to be passionate about density, because when you have people living near where they work, near where they take their kids to childcare, you have lower emissions. 40%, 50% of our emissions in the region come from transportation. So we can fix that with density. Now, it has to be smart density. It has to be beautiful density. But I think we've got really talented architects in this province, in this country that are designing buildings that I think we want to, are proud to have in Victoria. So it is a big challenge to make people see the future. And that's one of the challenges of being, an elected official who's supposed to think in 4-year cycles, but I happen to think in 50-year cycles. I know that when we're approving things now, it's for the next 50 to 100 years. And people, the neighbors who come out and say they don't want this or that, I get it. That's their view or their experience right now. And of course we have to consider that. And we also have to consider the future. So it's a challenge.
The whole thing struggled a little bit. We want ECDEV. We wanted people to come into the downtown. We want people to move to Victoria. Then you go and provide a scenario for folks to do that. And now people are complaining. A little bit sort of contradictory and a little bit me first. You know, I'm not entirely sure where that would happen in Victoria, you know, as opposed to the West Shore where there's lots of land.
Yeah, lots of forests, lots of biodiversity, lots of places to go hiking, right? Like all of those things. And it's interesting, the city and SIP and BC Investment Management Corporation and one of the local developers here, we commissioned a report out of the UK in London in the UK to do an analysis of Victoria compared to, 20 benchmark cities and then 20 case studies. It was really comprehensive. And I think it's all up on SIP's website now. But, you know, one of the things that we got a really low grade on was protecting biodiversity. And that matters to people. People want to have places to leave town and go for a hike. They want to have places where they can go sit by the creek. And if everything is developed, that's no good. And I think that's our role as the urban core, to take more density so that we can have the forests and the biodiversity protected.
Totally. And that generally a downtown core is built in such a way as to support density. They're very walkable. There are bike lanes. Okay, I know I don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to go into the absolute passionate question of mine and an issue that I've been involved with, that being regional economic development. Give us, in the remaining time we have with you, sort of an update with regard to how you and council, which have, by the way, limited means, you know, councils aren't expected to be and don't have the taxation capacity to do the kind of economic development that a provincial or federal government can do. Nonetheless, give us some of your future thoughts and vision around supporting the technology sector, especially the tourism sector, which has been obliterated, and I now know most recently the marine sector. And just kind of those three big questions in the few minutes we have left.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm going to just answer the question by showing your viewers this, and strongly encouraging everybody to read it. So you can find it online, victoria.ca/prosperity.
Okay.
That's Victoria 3.0. And it's our economic action plan out to 2041, 20 years out. And really all of the activities in there are meant to create inclusive, low carbon prosperity. So the subtitle is Recovery, Reinvention, and Resilience. And so what we've been doing for the last year is working hard to support our struggling tourism sector, getting them ready for reopening. The Build Back Victoria program, which, you know, saw hotels even get their kitchens out onto the streets, their restaurants out onto the street. And that's been, I think, a remarkable success. I just had a meeting this morning with the mayor of Port Angeles and her tourism bureau folks and our tourism bureau folks, planning a big event for when when she can come here, and we're going to welcome her with open arms, with marching bands and a First Nations welcome. Anyways, really grand plans, because we want to signal that we're open for tourism. And then one of the key things that I've been working on, again, it was an objective in Victoria 3.0, is this new organization called COAST, the Center for Ocean Applied Sustainable Technology. And I'm on the board of that organization as a startup. And really what it's meant to do is leverage all the small companies, all the big companies, all the post-secondary, all the government, anyone interested in the ocean and marine sector. And again, with a focus on blue economy, decarbonization, and getting the ocean and marine industries ready for the 22nd century. It's really, I love startups. You know that. We started a community microlending together. And now this is another start. It's a nonprofit, but it will be a hub for the blue economy on the Pacific Ocean. And
well, I think that's going to be an absolute home run initiative.
Game changer for sure.
Game changer. There's been evidence and experience of this happening in the region, so you can build upon those successes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of experience around this, and a lot of companies already in this space. So I'm glad to hear about that. Okay, we're running up to, where you have another meeting, and I want to.
This isn't a meeting. This is way more fun than a meeting.
Oh, fantastic! That's great news, because I'd certainly like to chat with you again down the road. Hopefully with Robin. I'm sure he'll be part of the show down the next time we speak. Let's just talk now about you and where you're going and what's going to happen. There's an election, I think, in 2022. And what are you going to run again?
Absolutely not. Absolutely.
Okay,
No,
not
no, I mean, 8 years at this pace and velocity is just about enough. Also, I think 8 years in a CEO role, it's time to turn over. So one of the things that people don't really realize is the mayor is the elected head of the city, but also I'm the CEO of the corporation of the city of Victoria. And I think 8 years for a CEO in a leadership role is enough. So hopefully we'll have someone, and not just a person, but a council come in who can really see what the future looks like and make every decision based on that future. Because we're going to change. Victoria is going to change, and it's going to change either by default or by design. And I think we've got a lot more going for us if we change by design and look at, to density, to climate change, to inclusivity, to growing prosperity for everyone. It's possible, but not if we make decisions based on a 4-year political cycle. So.
Well, Lisa, I continue to be a supporter of yours. If I get involved with you again, I will, and obviously in any kind of capacity, I would be encouraging you to communicate and talk and express vision as much as possible. Maybe I can be part of that. But thanks for having this time on the Victoria Rumble Room. And we hope to see you soon. Maybe after the summer's over, we can touch base again.
Sounds good. That sounds great. We'll look forward to meeting Robin as well.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, John.
Well, Johnny, that was a bit of a love fest. But, I give Lisa Helps credit for being honest and open. She handled the questions that we came up with. And, it's not an easy place to be when you're under attack a lot for decisions made, even though I personally believe some of the decisions she made, she didn't need to make. But she's only one person on a council. If a council moves in a certain direction, she has to follow that. And this is a very difficult council. Thank God Stephen Andrews there to kind of balance things out a bit. But I wouldn't want to be the head of this particular group because it's a very unpredictable council right now in the city of Victoria.
Robin, thanks. Lisa Helps is my friend. She'll always be my friend. I've worked with her. I'm a supporter. There are issues regionally, however, that are challenging us completely and totally, i.e. homelessness, safety, economic development, transportation, friends or not. These politicians need to be accountable. Some of us will challenge that accountability in different ways, but I'm glad I asked the questions. We got to continue to ask the questions of her council, and all the other, how many municipalities do we have? 82?
13, I believe, 13.
And so we have to continue to find ways to solve these very challenging questions.
We'll get Lisa Helps back on, John.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. As we do with other politicians, other community members, other organizations, many challenging questions for the Victoria Rumble Room that we're going to be talking about over the summer and into the fall. And guess what? Unfortunately, now we've sort of reached the end of when most people care to listen. They want to get out into the sun. They want to have some fun, and they want to stop listening.
Or even watch us, John.
Stop listening.
They're viewing us too. They're not just listening. They're actually seeing your smiling face.
Exactly. Been doing podcasts for 7 or 8 years. I'm so used to people listening to me. They're actually viewing me. By the way, on the viewing thing, you'll notice I have another shirt. I'm a huge shirt aficionado. I change them with every interview. And I know that's a little, I love it. Man, I've got like 100 of these.
It's like working with Cher.
Back in the day when we used to wear ties, I would have these paisley ties. Anyway, I'm going to change, and I changed these, have a look for some of our really steady listeners. Rose, I hope you like my shirts. Let's talk about next week. Let's talk about where we're going. We have a guest that's very popular amongst the real estate scene, amongst the development scene, that being John Kozakowski of Citified Victoria. He's on the radio. He's on CFAX. He's going to be on the Victoria Rumble Room. I can't wait to chat with him. Generally, I will support our show and go through all sort of the URLs and the taglines of how to support. You're going to see them on top of us, bottom of us here on Zoom. But let's just emphasize why are we doing that? I mean, why are we doing that? We think that we are talking about issues that aren't talked about elsewhere. We think we're getting into some discussion that's just not happening. And so we encourage people to share, to like, to view, so that they get some different perspectives that we think we're bringing. And so I continue to promote that vision, to promote that kind of objective. And I remain half member of the Victoria Rumble Room, John Juricic.
And I'm Robin Adair, and Rumble on Canada.